About 5 children die every day from child abuse. Hi, my name's Pam, and today I'm going to be telling you about child abuse. This is a horrible war against children, and we do have the power to stop it. And education on the issue is the first step. So what exactly is child abuse? Federal law from the Keeping Children and Their Families Safe Act of 2003 defines child abuse as any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death, serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse or exploitation, or an act or failure to act which presents imminent risk or serious harm. Now that's a little confusing, but simply put, it's child maltreatment, especially by a parent or a caretaker. Many people within my field of human development and family studies will be working with children and their families, and one of these children may even be impacted by child abuse. Who knows, maybe this professional would be the only advocate for a child facing child abuse. And because of a professional interaction with a child, there's an obvious obligation to report any suspicions and always keep a child safe. Another way to keep children safe is by understanding exactly what is going on in child abuse. There's 4 major types of child abuse. So we've said that child abuse is just child maltreatment by a parent or a caregiver. So now we're able to dig deeper to the major types of child abuse, which are physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. So physical abuse is defined by non-accidental physical injuries, ranging from just bruises or severe fractures or even death. Things like punching, beating, kicking, shaking, throwing, just otherwise harming a child, all are included in this definition. And it's important to note that physical abuse, even if the parent doesn't try to hurt the child, is abuse. An example of this would be shaking a child. You're trying to get them to calm down or just be quiet, and so they're shaking them, and they're not meaning to hurt them, but they are. So that's also considered abuse. Another question that can arise with physical abuse is spanking considered abuse? And by law, no. If it's reasonable and if it doesn't cause bodily injury to the child, then it is okay and not considered abuse. Sexual abuse is defined by the use or coercion of any child engaged in or assist any other person to engage in any sexually explicit conduct or stimulation. So that includes prostitution, pornographic material, fondling a child, penetration, indecent exposure, incest, or rape. And then next is emotional abuse, which is defined by a pattern of behavior that impairs the child's emotional development or their sense of self-worth. So constant criticism, threats, rejection, just withholding love, support, and guidance are all examples of emotional abuse. And this is really difficult to prove, which makes it really hard for CPS to intervene before it's too late. And then also a key element of emotional abuse is that it's usually always present with another type of abuse. And then lastly, we have neglect, which neglect is defined as a failure of a parent or caregiver to provide basic needs for a child. Neglect can come in many different forms, including physical, medical, educational, and emotional. The statistical breakdown of the 4 major types of child abuse and their prevalence are: physical is 28.3%, sexual is 20.7%, emotional is 10.6%, and neglect is 24.7%. So we can see that physical abuse and neglect are the most common to occur, but they're also usually the easiest to detect. However, sexual, physical, and emotional can be somewhat difficult to detect unless the person reporting has a lot of interaction with that child and their family. So how do you detect child abuse? Warning signs are a great way to examine if there really is an issue at hand. The warning signs can vary just depending on the type of abuse that's taking place. Some warning signs that are across the board usually are emotional or behavioral issues, delayed development, or unexplained injuries or extremes in behavior. Some common signs for physical abuse are just the unexplained bruises, burns, broken bones, or the child seems frightened of the parent, or they just cry when it's time to go home, and also aggressive behavior. Some warning signs for sexual abuse are the child has difficulty walking or sitting, they refuse to change for gym, or just don't want to participate in physical activities of any sort, and then they demonstrate a great deal of sexual knowledge that they otherwise wouldn't have known. And then some warning signs for emotional abuse are if the child acts like an adult or if they act like an infant. So if they try and parent other children, or they're rocking themselves, like things like that. If the child has attempted suicide, or if the child reports lacking attachment to that parent, they just don't want to be with them. Lastly, the warning signs of neglect are if the child begs or steals food or money. They lack sufficient clothing for the weather, so if they're wearing a tank top and it's freezing outside, like that's not okay. Or if they're frequently absent from school. These are all warning signs. So obviously, children are a very vulnerable population, and they need people to be their voice and advocate for them. A good rule of thumb to follow to advocate for these kids is the look, ask, and report method. Just look for these symptoms and warning signs that I said for child abuse, and then ask open-ended questions. Ask the child, so what happened? Or can you tell me more about this? And just be a good listener and definitely always believe what they're telling you. And then finally, go with your gut. If something doesn't feel right, then go ahead and report to the Texas Abuse and Neglect Hotline. It can never go unnoticed. And child abuse reports are made every 10 seconds. So do not degrade the value of trying to help a child. But who are the victims of child abuse? And this seems like it should be a really easy question, but did you know that the highest rate of victimization is between birth and 1 year? So the less powerful the child, the higher risk for them to be victimized. Child abuse is usually equally distributed between gender, with girls accounting for 51.2% and boys accounting for 48.5% of victims. So clearly child abuse doesn't pick and choose by gender or ethnicity, and people like Oprah Winfrey and Bill Clinton are survivors of child abuse, and now they both advocate for the cause. Another group of advocates addressing the issue of child abuse is Children's Health Medical Center in Dallas. Children's Health has established a program called the ARCH. The ARCH stands for the At-Risk Children's Center. So the ARCH is a one-of-a-kind center just dedicated to improving the healthcare, the well-being, and the physical and emotional outcomes for these at-risk children. The ARCH understands some children face more issues than others, and this is exactly why they're here, and it's a place that offers those children and their families the care, the education, and the support that they need. Their services are provided by a multidisciplinary team of specialists. Also, they work alongside the Family Access Network of Dallas to ensure that these children and their families don't fall through the cracks and that the children enjoy a childhood like they deserve. Children's Health also has another program in place to combat the issue of child abuse, and that program is REACH. So REACH stands for the Referral and Evaluation of At-Risk Children. REACH goes above and beyond a Band-Aid approach to child abuse. They help children heal, they move beyond the abuse, and just help the child truly thrive. They're the only clinic in the greater DFW area with medical providers trained and certified in child abuse pediatrics. And their clinical team at Children's Health REACH is linked with the Dallas Police Department, Child Protective Services, and Dallas's Advocacy Center. So all of these are to ensure that each at-risk kid is provided with the best comprehensive care available. The conditions that are specifically treated through the ARCH and REACH are the physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and non-organic failure to thrive. Now we've talked about the physical, the sexual, and the neglect, but we haven't talked about non-organic failure to thrive. And that's typically a child who's under the age of 2 who has stunted growth for no known medical reason. The cause may be linked to economic, psychological, or a social issue within the household. And this failure to thrive is marked by low weight or small height. So the main warning signs for this type of abuse are just major developmental skill issues. So it's evident that child abuse is a pressing issue within the field of human development and family studies, but also within our society. But with programs like REACH and ARCH through Medical Children's Center in Dallas, we can make a difference in the lives of children. So today I've told you about child abuse and the programs at Children's Medical Center in Dallas to combat the issue. Thank you.